My name is Todd Carter. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a startup here in New York City called Tagasauris. So Tagasauris is a media annotation platform that actually has its origins in a collaboration with a company called Magnum Photos here in New York. So unless you're deep into the photography world, you won't necessarily recognize the name Magnum Photos, but you'll recognize the imagery of Magnum Photos because it's perhaps, the most important sort of collection of photography left in sort of private hands. So it's a cooperative made up of about 60 member photographers who was started by Henri Cartier-Bresson, sort of the maybe the most famous photographer of all time. And they just have amassed this absolutely amazing library of photography that goes back, to probably the 30s and then, forward until today. So whether it's the guy in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square or John F. Kennedy Jr. saluting his father's procession that's been shot by a Magnum photographer. The sort of sad part about it, Magnum's collection, so they have about 500,000 images in an electronic archive. It turns out that the vast percentage of them were not annotated at all, or had only cursory metadata, maybe like a multi-character file name. And so we sort of had this idea that we could build a crowd-powered annotator to make sense of that collection. And we've looked at a lot of different, ways of attacking the problem. And we had some sort of sense that we needed to worry about things like words and the meaning of words. They're sort of very problematic. Jaguar could be a car, a cat, a Formula One team, could be a jet fighter. We had problems with word boundaries or perceived problems with word boundaries where words begin and end. And then we had problems with the scale. We wanted this idea sort of like a word should have some meaning and it should mean the same thing in Bangladesh that it means here in New York City. And so we wanted to come up with this kind of idea of web scale IDs and sort of a customized vocabulary. So we looked out at the sort of linked open data world for what lessons that we could draw and things that we could draw upon. We also had this idea that we needed to have lots of different places where we could do this work. So in our principal labor channel is actually Mechanical Turk. But we also had internal workers, we had workers overseas that we wanted to sort of bring into this process or into various phases of this process. So that was something we looked at carefully. We also, Amanda talked very carefully about, eloquently about the problem of setting up jobs. When we first started running jobs in June of 2010, and by August, I think we had realized that we just did not have a system that was adequately expressive to the task of hand, because it turned out that actually classifying and categorizing images is not quite as easy as it maybe looks at first blush. So we needed to build a really powerful tool to annotate media. And so we built this sort of incredible IDE where you could just kind of drag and drop workflows and jobs and create sort of the kinds of processes that are tailored to very specific kinds of output. So that was an issue. Quality management, we all hear this as an issue in crowdsourcing, so we wanted really an expressive quality management system that could work for each of the different kinds of jobs we sort of imagined in these workflows. We wanted to support all the popular media types, not just photos. A Magnum, for example, produces an in-motion product, so we wanted to support video, and we wanted to support media fragments, so that the idea that sort of video or audio is not necessarily a completely linear experience, but you can sort of get at fragments and move through the space, just like you can move through web pages. We needed to achieve super tight process fit, because when you have hundreds of thousands of things to annotate, you've got to have a way to get stuff into Turk fast and a way to get stuff out of Turk fast. And then the thing I think maybe we've come to most recently is we need to come up with all kinds of clever ways to make this process more efficient and more scalable by adding algorithms to these, algorithmic processes to these workflows. So to just kind of look at the process at a glance, the basic system we set up has sort of this pluggable kind of API-driven piece where a media owner, a content owner, somebody with a lot of content to be annotated can sort of plug into this thing. So it's sort of, we're more API focused than we are like upload a CSV file, just because of the volume of stuff that has to go down. We then, in the system, we build these workflows. We have this IDE where we can kind of create these complex workflows, and then we add the media to those workflows, and then we can syndicate those onto a variety of different labor channels. So right now we've run about 750,000, 750,000 judgments we've probably extracted off of MTurk. But we're also looking at other kinds of labor channels, and we're looking at places where we can draw, where we have high degrees of social engagement. So Magnum has like 250,000 Twitter followers who are actively following Magnum, but they're not really doing much at the moment other than following Magnum. So there's a vision of getting those people involved in the process. So syndicate out into the labor market. We've got all this kind of idea of semantic annotation and the quality of service component, and then bring it back and build this sort of new data set that results by combining these things together.
Who are your media owners? How do you identify this person is qualified or not qualified?
Well, they tend to be like large media companies as opposed to individuals, but I think in the future they could well be individuals. So they're people like Magnum Photos, or people like the Museum of the City of New York. These are institutions that have large collections who have the appropriate rights to the underlying content.
So the premise of how the premise of your media is based on these organizations and how they would classify an image should be or a certain file should be. If the two institutions view things very differently, just because it is art, how do you?
Well, so a couple things. So, we started out very much with this sort of idea that we were looking backwards in time to help media organizations kind of, make sense of their archives. That's one very significant use case for us. There's another use case which is sort of like dealing with the sort of ephemeral nature of, events from things like Twitter. So you have something in Egypt where, one day there's an event, there's this flood of content. How do you make sense of that? So there's sort of two different worldviews. In terms of sort of bespoke ontologies or this whole issue, we're using like linked open data sources. So like if we have an annotation process that involves locations, we're tying back to a source like geonames. So we're getting longitude and latitude data from geonames, and we're tying that into the annotation process. So now you've got coordinates on that object in that city that are meaningful at a global scale, right? As opposed to sort of Paris, could be Paris, France, Paris.
Master data now.
Pardon me?
You've established master data now. Like
Well, we haven't established it. The wonderful thing is that other people are establishing it for us, and we're just using it, right? So there's 100 million man-hours invested in Wikipedia. It turns out to be a really great place to derive sort of ontology data from, for example. So those were sort of like the vision, and we built this kind of content management system for crowdsourcing. So this is just a sort of a snapshot of our alpha product. It's maybe a little hard to see in here, but you've got sort of contact sheets, of images. You've got the annotations. You mouse over the annotations. You've got sort of the meanings. Those meanings are all like info box data that are pipelined out of things like Wikipedia. So when the workers work, they are hitting these linked open data sources. So when they say Paris, we know it's Paris Hilton and not Paris, France, or Paris, Mexico.